Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for another Discover Wildlife evening. I was driving home from work tonight thinking it's kind of all right at this time of year to do these because it's dark and it's cold and it's quite nice to be at home just sort of doing something different. But once it gets to summer, it's a bit less tempting, but it is starting to get lighter in the evening, so that's always quite nice. So we are really lucky to have the lovely Mark Carwardine here tonight with us. I mean, all of you know Mark, so I don't really need to do an introduction, but I'm just going to do a little one. So obviously he's best known for doing the Last Chance to See books with Douglas Adams and a TV series with Stephen Fry, followed by books about the same, and various things on BBC Radio 4, including an interview about 20 minutes ago. I'm not really sure how he manages to fit it all in. So some of you might have even heard him on your way home. So but mainly he leads trips, and he's been doing that for, well, about 35 years, a bit more than 35 years. And obviously leads a lot with us, for us. We help out with the organization for them, but has visited some incredible places. I am Emma. For those of you who don't know me, I work for Wildlife Worldwide as part of the sales team, but I also lead some of our photography trips. So I'm here to add some images to this talk. We're gonna talk about our 2024. Really, it's a bit kind of self-indulgent, isn't it? So we are here to talk about, with a couple of exceptions, our 2024 trips. So we're really lucky. A lot of people do tell me at events that I go to, we have the best job in the world. And some days, most days, I agree. And we get to travel to a lot of amazing places and take photographs of these fantastic things. So we're here tonight to kind of highlight really a lot of the places that we went last year, or that we lead trips to, or really want to kind of talk about. And we've painstakingly narrowed down our images, haven't we? To try
It's
and...
been a nightmare because, I just got back from Hungary. I'll show you in a minute, and I was there for a week. Got back about 10 days ago, and to a little group of six of us, and I think we averaged 31,000 pictures each in the week. And Emma's made me pull out six. Same with all the other trips. So it's impossible, but at least it'll give a little flavour.
Yeah, exactly. And it is impossible. I mean, everybody knows, especially with all these mirrorless cameras, we end up with thousands of pictures. And then how do you narrow it down? And then you don't really have time to edit them all. And anyway, so we've done what we can. So we're going to talk for, we'll say an hour-ish. But we do have quite a lot of photos to get through. So if you were planning an early night, I'm sorry. Or if you do leave us, this is being recorded and you can watch the rest later. But we are going to try and keep it as brief as possible. But if there are questions during the talk, please do use the Q&A function to ask those. And
you see the questions, I can't. You can see questions.
Yeah, I'm in control, Mark.
Okay, good.
But we like it. It's all good.
No, that's good.
So if anybody has any questions, please do use the Q&A. And I think that's about it. Enjoy some hopefully nice photos and hopefully nice critique, Mark. Hint, hint. Thanks.
Okay, let's start. So I mentioned this is Hungary, and which is rapidly becoming one of my favorite wildlife photography destinations, actually. I've been going there now for 20 years and been running trips just the last few years. We go to a place close to the Serbian border, which is run by an old mate of mine called Bensamate. You probably all know. He's actually the only person to have won the Wildlife Photographer of the Year adult competition and junior competition, and hundreds of other awards. He's an amazing photographer. And what he's done is he's set up, at the last count, 24 different hides on his land, which is surrounded by a national park and heaving with wildlife. And depending on which time of year you go, there are different numbers of hides open. And they're not just like, garden shed hides with a hole like we have in many nature reserves in Britain. These are hides which are heated, cooled, got underfloor heating, got one-way glass, got shooting at water level, so they're underwater. And we were using 4 different hides in the winter. You use 24 if you go in June, July. And this particular one was from a hide. You go downstairs, You crawl along a tunnel or crouch your way along a tunnel. You come out in this wonderful hide with sort of great big office chairs, swing tripod system, and you can shoot either side of the hide at water level, and you're getting images like this, cormorant with a catfish, and you can't go wrong. I mean, I said I took 31,000 pictures. I was shooting pre-capture with this on my new Canon R5, which means you can get the 15 shots before you press the button and 30 after. So I'm shooting a lot. Let me just see if I can change that. Okay, didn't go on. This is also from the same hide. And most of these hides are day and night. So daytime, you're shooting everything from white-tailed sea eagles to egrets and herons and cormorants and various wildfowl and hooded crows and stuff like that. And then at night, we have a backlit section. And so there's a light up above the heron and the cormorant here, which is providing some amazing lighting. And you're shooting at water level, so you really can't go wrong. This is from a different hide, a great egret. I just like this shot because it's a bit different. It's later on in the afternoon, shooting up against the sky, and there's just such beautiful colours and detail in the fish's fins. And I think that for me is what made the shot. I could have brightened the heron. I did take a couple with the first time it caught one of these and realised that there's potential for doing something different instead of exposing the heron, the egret properly. And these are the later ones, different fish, all underexposed to make that light shine through the fin. So that was from another hide.
Wait.
Yeah, go on. Do you want me to go back?
Sorry. Yeah, please. Sorry. Because I mean, honestly, it's making me nervous.
Why?
We're supposed to be, oh no, well, because it's just how I roll. With the, I was going to question that, the detail in the heron, because actually I was wondering about if you left the bottom bit in because of the splashes, or if you'd considered like chopping it, I don't know, just under the bottom of the neck, so that light bit was.
I didn't try that actually. I quite like the splashes, so that was what I was thinking.
I thought that would be
Fairly broader crop, and I quite like the reeds behind, just making it look like shadows. So I didn't want to crop too tight. Good experiment is one of those pictures you can produce something very different by processing and cropping differently. Again, very subjective.
always.
So there's a wonderful kingfisher hide with artificial lighting, and again you're in a sort of sunken hide shooting through one-way glass, and kingfisher comes on this perch and dives regularly during the day. And this was later on in the afternoon, so it was a lot darker and actually very hard to get. You need to shoot diving kingfish for about 4,000th of a second, really, to get all the wingtips sharp and all that kind of stuff. And we did loads of those. I mean, hundreds and hundreds. You can see the one I've just added top left of the picture. Lots and lots of those sort of shots when it's nice and bright. As it gets darker later in the afternoon, we just tried experimenting. So this was 1 second exposure, and sorry, half a second exposure, half a second, because we worked out it was taking half a second from the perch, leaving the perch to hitting the water. And I don't, if I told you, if I hadn't told you it was a kingfisher, would you have been able to tell it was a kingfisher?
Yeah, that's what I love about it, because you can see the colors, and it's quite a nice abstract, but you can tell immediately what it is by the colors.
Yeah, I mean, very distinctive colours. And then I've just put in a little video, very easy to get stuff like this. You just line it up in the spot in the pond in front of the hide, and you can either do still photography like that or video. I think we're already talking much too much. I'm going to speed on a little bit. This is from a different hide. There's a drinking station. Buzzards come down to that fairly often. Sparrowhawk came down while I was there. And loads of wonderful little birds, loads of bramblings and hawfinches and all the usual stuff that we're used to in the UK. And rain, you just pray for rain and snow on this kind of trip. So the next shot was this same hide, but the nighttime shoot. And this is a roe deer fawn in a snowstorm. And again, we had backlighting all set up. So you're sitting in the hide. There's actually a pool. I did do some shots in the drinking station pool with the reflection, but I prefer without that. You can just see a hint of it down there. but it's the snow that made the picture. So same height, different time of day. You do have time to go back and eat very quickly, but it's a very, very full on. If you want to, you can be shooting pretty much 24 hours a day. There's so much. So that's the end of my Hungary in the winter. Over to you.
I think it's always really important to say how much rain helps, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of people always say, "Oh God, it's raining. It's going to be terrible today," and I'm just like, "Just get me out there now," because I just think it adds so
Oh,
much. It's amazing, actually. And this was I was lucky enough to go to Falkland, South Georgia, and Antarctica. This is my slight exception. It was kind of the end of 23. But because we're now doing an Antarctic trip in February next year and the year after, I sort of thought, creative license, we're just going to pop it in. So
and we're
this is
doing South Georgia and the Falklands later this year.
you are, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And Mark's going to talk about that later. Yeah, he's on our festival later this year, so he'll be talking about that. So yeah, this was actually South Georgia, and it was our first landing, and we'd had a fairly decent crossing over, but as we arrived in the area, it started raining like like you've never seen rain. And to our surprise, they were like, yeah, we're getting off. Yeah, fine. You've got all the kit. What's that saying? There's no such thing as the wrong clothes. Uh, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's the wrong clothes, isn't it? So
Something
we
like that.
geared up. Yeah, we geared up and went outside. And actually, as we got off the Zodiacs onto the land, the rain stopped, which was amazing because, of course, then everything that had been kind of huddling under the tussock grass came out. So this was one of the lovely weaners
I do
stretching.
love this shot. I just love it's
Yeah.
a kind of shot that it demonstrates you've got to stay with an animal.
Mm.
You go ashore somewhere like this, and it can be really overwhelming. You want to just snap everything. And I think the trick is to just pick your subject and stay with it. And probably when you first got there, it was just lying there. And by spending time with it, you end up getting a picture. All those you know, fat wrinkles are just fantastic. The angle of the tail, it all works really, really well, at angle of the head as well. But I think it's just spending time with one individual. You tend to get more pictures than racing around thinking you've got to record everything.
Well, exactly that. And I think, and I always, depending whether it's macro, mammals, whatever, birds, I always think about the background. And with that one, I decided that the clouds were kind of going over the snowy mountain in the back, and I wanted the background to be that. So I kind of waited, and luckily the seal played ball. So, well, not ball, that would be a circus, but it was very nice. So, and this was similarly, this was in South Georgia, and I found the whaling stations interesting, but quite tricky to see. And I tended to kind of stay outside more. And what I really loved about it was just watching the wildlife kind of taking the land back for themselves. And I think this was one of those images that I wanted to show the relationship of them, really. And, the seal's just doing his thing, waiting for his harem on the beach in front of this enormous shipwreck that's next to the whaling station. So I just quite like the contrast.
Yeah, I love those backgrounds.
Yeah.
I'm speeding along because I'm
Yeah, go for it.
going to be
Um,
here until at least
This is a rock hopper hopping. They do this on the Falklands. It's fantastic. And I think, I don't know about you, but I think one of the things, like you say, you get to all these locations and then you're just bombarded with all these things, penguins everywhere or seals. And there's just, you've got a really finite amount of time and you just want to capture as much as possible. And my main thing really with rock hoppers was, do they hop? Like, why are they called rock hoppers? So I was quite keen to kind of watch their behavior between the rocks. So yeah, I tried to get a rock hopper hopping. It annoys me that his tail is slightly below
I
the
was
rock.
just going to say that you beat two. He
Sorry.
gets 9 points. You lose a big point at the end of the
It's
table.
fair for me
Very
too.
nice
It's all
shot
right.
then.
And then getting down to Antarctica, it's really just about the kind of the black and white and the amazing landscapes that you're faced with and just the really harsh rock and incredible snow. So I was always trying to kind of capture how the penguins live in this incredible landscape, really. So, and Adelies were my absolute favorite penguins. I know you shouldn't really have a favorite, but they are gorgeous. BC, then I do love genties. It's very tricky. Uh, and the genties, because we were there end of November, and the genties were nesting, which is hilarious in itself because you just watch them nicking stones from each other's nests when they think the other one's not looking. And this was one of those. He was actually on his nest, holding it and everybody was stealing stones around him. And I think he was kind of calling probably for his other half to come back and help him protect the nest. So yeah, I'd try to single them out. Like you know, like we said, there's just so much around, and you're on this beach just surrounded by thousands of penguins, which is just unthinkable. And it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard when you're there to kind of pick what to do. So I just got myself with a really clear background and just waited, like you say, for one of the two that I was looking at to do something.
I love the minimalism of that one.
Thanks. Yeah, and the same sort of thing with this. We were passing an iceberg, and I just looked in the middle, and there was just this one Adelie sitting in there. So I was just really keen to kind of try and show the massive nature of this iceberg and how this, you know, there's lots of kind of penguins around the iceberg in various places, but I loved how this one was just peacefully sitting out of the wind. It's great. And that's what you get to see when you're there for a long time. You get to, you know, in various landings, you get to see all these different behaviors, don't you? Oh, I love
So
them.
I've just squeezed in Falklands and South Georgia as well. And to be honest, for 2024, I didn't go for I think the first time apart from COVID for the last 30 years. So I feel it's okay to squeeze it in. We're doing a trip to South Georgia and the Falklands this October. And I've been so many times, but it blows me away every time. This was a most recent one, and this was Commerson's dolphins. It was funny, we were in the Falklands, we had a bit of bad weather, and we delayed a landing. And the minute we decided to delay the landing and make an announcement, these Commerson's dolphins appeared around the ship. And it was one of the best encounters I've had with them ever. They were racing about, leaping about, right by the ship, right close to us. Hard to get shots like this, had to take a lot to get that sort of detail rather than just a quick blip of the back from above. But absolutely wonderful encounter. And you do see them most times you go to the Falklands, but that was a particularly good encounter. This is a black-browed albatross in one of the colonies there, which just, I mean, you could spend weeks just sitting next to a black-browed albatross colony. There are so many different pictures to get, and I just love isolating. They're such beautiful, spectacular birds. So just isolating the face like that was what I was trying to achieve.
Love the simplicity of that one. It's gorgeous.
I love this one. This was in on South Georgia, in Grytviken at the whaling station. My manager, Rachel, doesn't like this at all. She tells me I was really upset. She said doesn't like it at all. But to me, what I love about that picture is it looks like the tern's tail is bending the post. That's what makes it work, and the sort of abstract shape behind. I love the colours, the metal colours as well. Then you happen to have an Antarctic tern on it. I love it, but shows how subjective
Like
it
you
is.
could have, yeah, exactly. It looks like you could have put the tern on the whatever it's
Yeah,
on, the pole in the picture.
exactly. The way it
Perfectly.
bends that post is wonderful. Rachel disagrees. I haven't had a chance to have words about that yet. This is on South Georgia as well. I love doing minimalist stuff when it's really snowy and icy. And the king penguins there are such spectacular birds. I mean, they're everywhere. You know, you're tripping over king penguins everywhere you land on South Georgia. Isolating them is actually quite tricky. So this was quite deep snow, and we were quite a way back from quite a large number of king penguins, and they were moving around. And suddenly realised there were these amazing shapes, and every so often you could isolate a few. And I just love the juxtaposition of the one looking out of frame and the other two fast asleep. Another one doing what's called high key, sort of overexposing a little bit, which works very well with king penguins in snow. You can see a little bit of detail there in the foreground, not a lot. It's all about the shapes and the colours of the penguins marching past me. So I experiment a lot doing that kind of shot, and it can be really effective with certain species, king penguins being one of them. And that's one of my all-time favourites, I have to say, from South Georgia. A couple of baby elephant seals, and they were play fighting. And I took a couple of hundred shots, and we were being called back to the ship, end of the landing, and I almost had to be dragged by the ankles, just thinking, oh my God, there were several of us there shooting them. It's the most amazing encounter ever. And of course, it happens the last 5 minutes of the landing. But anyway, managed to get some cute shots. They're such beautiful animals, cute eyes. Oh, and Baja. So I've been going to Baja as well since my first trip was 1991. And I counted up recently. I've been on that trip, done that trip 91 times. And so I've actually spent more time in my little cabin on that boat than in most houses I've lived in. And it's wonderful. Baja California is just the most wonderful place for whales and whale watching. This is a blue whale in the Sea of Cortez taken with a drone. And if you behave right, if you don't race around and you just take it slowly or you stop, very often these large whales, blue whales included, will associate with the boat and they'll slow down or they'll come right up to the boat. You know, sometimes we'll stay with an individual whale for hours or most of the day and just take our time and we both get used to one another. And that's how you get these wonderful, close, unhurried encounters instead of racing up to it and when it dives, chase after it. That's horrible. Taking your time is what gets those sort of encounters.
I also think I'm not a big fan of drones, but actually with whales, I just think they're a game changer, aren't they? Some of the
Well,
images.
I know what you mean. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of people behave very irresponsibly with drones. I
Yeah.
saw a bit of footage on YouTube a few weeks ago of somebody flying a drone around a giraffe's head, and the
Yeah.
giraffe was running
Yeah.
in a complete panic. And you think that's
Yeah.
outrageous.
Yeah. We
Uh,
had in
some of
Namibia where
the
they had one by an elephant and we were
oh, this is
what
why drones are being banned in so many places. Also, the noise as well is
yeah.
very disturbing for other people. Here, there's nobody else for miles, so I tend to spend a bit of time with the drone and then the rest of the time just watching from the deck. And the only whales I've found that get nervous of drones are male sperm whales,
Mm.
which tend to react. They'll sometimes roll on their side and clap their jaws. Most others, if you don't fly too low, then you know they're fine. From a research point of view, a complete game changer. You can see stuff that you just cannot see from boats, and of course they're a million times cheaper than renting light aircraft and having a 3-hour flight trying to find the whales and then studying them. So they're a complete game changer for
Yeah.
researchers. Whale sharks is another highlight of Baja California. There's a place called La Paz Bay, and we do see them elsewhere sometimes, but there's a population of them in La Paz Bay, and you can snorkel with them. And I do like whale sharks, but it's very interesting when you're snorkeling with a whale, you look into a whale's eye, and there's something there. There's a soul behind the eye. You look into a whale shark's eye, it just feels like it's hollow inside. It's,
Oh.
it's very different. I'm feeling mean to whale sharks now, but it's a very different experience. They're just doing what they're doing, whether you're there or not. Whereas a whale is registering you're there and interested in what you are and what you're up to. This was fun. This was on the last trip I did well, nearly a year ago now. A couple of elegant turns on a loggerhead turtle. And there's a little sequence, I haven't put it all in, but they sat on it, obviously thinking it was a bit of a log, a bit of wood. And then the turtle's head popped up and they're looking at it. And then its head came right up and the turtle realized, oh, heck, there's 2 turns on me. And they both took off.
Can you just go back for a second? I'm really sorry because I absolutely love this. And I just think anyone who's been on a trip with me knows I tend to kind of anthropomorphize animals quite a lot when I'm on the trips. And this just it like what's that thing that used to get creature comforts? Do you know where they used to put the voices on the animals? And I just start imagining with different accents and I love the character of it. But this happens so much, doesn't it? You just get the
Yeah.
birds, and I wonder if they do know or if they're just completely oblivious to it until they see its head. I
Oh,
always wonder.
I think they generally just thought it was a piece of wood.
Yeah, probably.
They suddenly took off when its head came up. This was just a moment before they took off. Grey whales are a big part of Baja, the breeding lagoons on the Pacific coast. This was in San Ignacio Lagoon, where you get the friend. Because you wouldn't let me have any more than 6 pictures. I haven't put any of the friendly greys in, but that's why you go in the lagoon. Then you get these spectacular displays of breaching, often 2, 3 times in a row. Generally, you miss the first one, think, oh my God, it's breaching. You get your camera ready for the second one and catch the third one. Loads of dolphins, the common dolphin. You see some really big schools of those. I mean, in the old days, I'm talking like 100 years ago, there are records of schools of 100,000 common dolphins in Baja. Not like that anymore, but we see schools of 4,000 fairly frequently, and 4,000 is very spectacular. It's like as far as the eye can see on either side of the boat, all leaping about, riding in the bow waves, leaping in the wake. Very exciting. and that was the one used as the title slide. California sea lion. There's a spot there called Losses Lotes where we go stalking with California sea lions, and it's really hard to tell who enjoys it more, us or the sea lions. They come and nip your fins and try and take people's masks off. I've seen one swimming around with a mask on his head, and they do loop the loop, and they swim straight at you and blow bubbles and try and make you jump. It's really good fun. This was a bit more. I love being a bit more minimalist. A lot of fantastic, particularly in Scandinavia, fantastic photographers who are shooting the animals in the environment, very small in the frame. And I think this works because of the sun's rays, which add something to the rest of the picture. And you can just make out that murky bottom of the seabed. And the sea line is far enough, near enough to the surface to be bright and clear. I just like, having the animal small, not always trying to get in really close.
I think that's massive. I love this. That's why I made it the header, obviously. But I think it's like I don't think people appreciate enough how much light plays a factor in any photograph. But I think anything underwater, I'd never really done anything underwater and recently went to the Philippines and just had a little GoPro, but was kind of playing around. And the difference, even looking with your eyes, when the sun comes out and shines, the whale sharks coming down, you suddenly see those gorgeous sun rays. It just completely changes it. And I love that this is just the sea lion because he just looks so happy. And
You're
imagine in
anthropomorphizing
places
it
like
now.
that, it's probably busier than you than it looks, but actually it just looks so stunning. Oh, it's
Right.
me.
You talking of happy.
It's bugs. Yay. Everyone knows I love a good bug. Um, so I thought I'd
That's
put
a
some,
stunning shot, by the way. I love that shot.
thank you. They are one of my favorite things to photograph. So this is a bush cricket, and it's in its kind of first incarnation. It's a nymph and it's just come out. So this is kind of May time. And I love it. It annoyed me at first, but I quite like the hair on its back now. I sort of wanted to take it away, but I'm not going to because I don't.
You're not
Uh,
allowed to.
no, I'm not allowed to. So it's an interesting one, and I've got a few macro images. So basically, I've just done a few of UK macro things because generally that's what I do in the UK. So I run macro days down in Surrey. So all of these bar one are actually from Sheepleys down in Surrey, and I run them in kind of May June time because I think it's the best when things are coming to life. And they're one of my favorites. So this actually is from Scotland, and this is a bit different. He was actually in a moth trap, but this is a chafer, a cockchafer that normally you'll see whacking into your window in the middle of summer, or you hear them, or they'll hit your head or something. You think, what the hell was that? And these chafers are just these big brown things, but once you actually look up close, I just think they're gorgeous, and they've got such character. So yeah, I love that.
These are wonderful.
A lot of people ask about focus stacking and different techniques, and I don't tend to focus stack. I try and get it as much as I can in camera. And there's a few things that I kind of talk through on the days, but it's also trying to kind of show them in their environment a little bit like a landscape, so a bit like a lion in a on a savanna or on a rock or something. I try and get these guys to show the relationship of kind of them to the leaf. This is just I think a nettle leaf or a bramble. So I just kind of try and show them a little bit in their
So is this
environment.
like to be a bit nerdy? I've got my nerdy
Yeah.
photography aperture. Oh, it's going. My camera's going to keep changing. All different apertures on my shirt. Is that like f32 with a flash, or how have you shot?
F16 with a flash. Yeah, so he it's daylight, but I try and kind of get it. If it's sunny, I'll be lower with the flash just to kind of give it a bit of fill-in flash. But I think this was quite a cloudy day. But these are hazel leaf rollers, which are really hard to find. And I also included this one because I was so excited, and the poor people on my macro day last summer, I'd never seen one of these in the UK. It's a tri-horned tree hopper, or a horned tree hopper, and I'd never seen one, and I was so excited. So we did spend quite a lot of time with this little guy, but luckily he was quite obliging. But again, that's the same. So F16, and I've got one of those diffusers that goes across the flash, so it just kind of softens it a bit, really.
Just one flash head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, I believe, is a nymph of one of those horned tree hoppers. I'm not 100%, but I think it's a nymph of one of those. So they kind of lay this cuckoo spit, and then these little nymphs come out of this cuckoo spit, and he was just kind of emerging as we were there, which was incredible.
Wonderful.
And yeah, just a bit of, I put this one because it's always good to get them doing something. It does really annoy me that the head, the leaf cuts through the head. I would have preferred to be slightly higher. And I generally try not to chop it off like that. But he flew off straight after this. So this was the only one I actually got of him. But he just caught this enormous wasp, and was starting to eat it. And then obviously didn't like being photographed. So decided to go and hide somewhere else to finish it. But I
So
think
you
it's
literally
always,
at one shot.
yeah, one.
Really good.
So it was, and I think it's always quite nice, you can get them sideways on, and you can get that if they're being obliging, you can get different positions. But I think it's always quite nice to get some behavior, and if they're eating something, just to kind of have a look at what they're eating as well. You learn a bit about them. So
That
yeah,
like a 100 mil macro or with
yeah,
extension tubes or yeah.
no, just 100 mil macro generally. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, something completely different. So I've been running trips to Galapagos every year for a while, and I'm doing another one this year and next year, and on a little boat. And we go to pretty much all the islands in the Galapagos. And again, it's a bit like South Georgia. It's just completely overwhelming. Everything is so tame. This was we had a whole load of white vented storm petrels around the boat when we'd just come back from a landing, and went back out in the small boats again, so we could get shooting right at sea level. And they were doing their walking on water trick and picking food off the surface. And we spent an hour or so with them. It was absolutely wonderful. Probably when we first got there, 100 of them, just pitter-pattering on the water. Beautiful light, as you can see, right near some cliffs, so lovely reflection on the water. And it's that sort of thing comes as a surprise, but it's when you're ashore that you just see so much. I hate the word tame, but very tame wildlife. You've got to be really careful not to trip over stuff. It's very well ordered. People say, "Oh, I'm not sure about Galapagos because there's so many tourists going." There are lots of people going, but it's very, very well organized. So while it takes a while to get used to the regimentation of it, you have a particular slot for a landing on a particular island, and that means that you're the only ones doing the landing at that time on that day. So you have to do that, and then you have to follow a path. But there's so much wildlife on the path. You're sort of picking your way around, stepping over baby giant tortoises or iguanas or even albatrosses and blue-footed boobies, because they're right there on the path. And then it's also fantastic for photography because there's nobody in the background. So everyone's shooting from the path, which is quite wide, with just wildlife, wild place behind. So from a photographic point of view, it works really, really well. And you do see other boats, not everywhere, but some landings, the really popular landings, you see other boats and other people. But for the most part, it works very, very well. I mean, I hate doing wildlife watching and photography with crowds of people. So if it was that bad, I really wouldn't go. But I look forward to our Galapagos trips every year. Loads of things like marine iguanas. I mean, they're just everywhere you go. And we snorkel with them. So there's some wonderful snorkeling, very easy snorkeling. And we're snorkeling with, well, marine iguanas. You see them feeding on the rocks, with Galapagos penguins, with diving cormorants, with Galapagos sea lions. We sometimes see little baby hammerhead sharks and other little baby sharks. It's just wonderful snorkeling as well. So great place to test underwater photography. And also some things you don't really think about. This is an immature Galapagos yellow warbler that was catching these flies. And it looks lovely. The adults are bright yellow. And on that black lava rock, they make fantastic photographic subjects. So there's loads of time. You see an animal doing like that, a bird doing that. You can just sit there and spend a bit of time with that. There might be somebody 10 feet away spending time with a marine iguana, somebody else up here lying down with a mockingbird or whatever. There's just stuff all along the landing sites, and just have plenty of time to do your own thing. It's wonderful. This is a blue-footed booby, one of the few pictures you'll ever see of a blue-footed booby without blue feet. I've turned it to black and white because I actually really like it's very dark cliffs, and that all that white, of course, is bird droppings, and it's quite hard to make bird droppings look appealing. but to make it look like icing on a cake, I think is quite effective. And I like the diagonal as well. If it was straight, horizontal, it wouldn't work as well, but that diagonal shape. And I've again darkened it. So I did do that in camera. Took a few shots, realized the potential, and then underexposed, and brought out that a little bit in processing. So slightly different take on a blue-footed booby. And swallow-tailed gulls, again, there's so much stuff to watch. You can literally sit and watch them for a whole morning, always doing something, courting or fighting or squabbling or preening or something. And you can just have your own pair of swallowtail gulls. Nobody else, everyone else has got their own wildlife. There's so much, and just sit with them for as long as you like. Absolutely wonderful place. Okay, over to you.
Oh, me. Some of you are going to recognize this. So I know there's some of you here who were on our festival last April in Tanzania, and then we followed on to Uganda. So I'm going to follow on a little bit after this. But this was the first time I've ever been able to photograph a caracal, and I know quite a lot of us were in the same boat. Chris Breen as well had never been able to photograph. I don't think he'd ever seen one. I think we were all, myself, Brett, and Chris. It was our first time, so it was quite a milestone, and it's probably not my favorite ever shot, but I'm just so happy to have
Stunning, conserve. It's a stunning shot.
it was just so
Over
exciting,
the moon
and
with it.
it was beautiful, and we had a few different sightings of her as well, which was lovely. I mean, she wasn't the most, she didn't pose, as well as we would have liked, but just the fact
You
that
can't complain about that for silver.
exactly, I'm not stunning. She was stunning, so I had to feature her because she was one of my highlights of the year.
Wonderful.
And obviously I had to put a couple of small things in too. This was actually in the lodge when, you get quite a lot of time off at lunchtime when everybody, some people are sleeping. Obviously, most of us don't sleep. We go and explore what we can find in the grounds. And this was on a bush right outside the lodge. We found this little chameleon, flapneck chameleon, just crawling. There were about three of them in there, crawling around the middle of the bush and popping out their heads every so often. And it was quite hard to kind of to capture them whole because they were just zipping in between the branches, but I just managed to get this guy as he was reaching, and I just quite liked the action of it, really.
Lovely. Great angle.
Oh, they're gorgeous. Yeah, stick your head in a bush. That's generally what macro ends up being, really. And the same with these guys. This just makes me smile because this was the one time when actually most people got out of the vehicle and were on the floor on the road. And I love that when, there's a bit of time to be able to stop looking at the big things. And that's such a big thing on safari. You're driving around and you're always looking for the big cats or the elephants or the giraffes or whatever. And yes, that's a massive part of it. But I do think once you actually have the time and you've seen all of those, and yes, it's fantastic to see them again, but it's nice to just take some time out and appreciate the littler things. And these guys were rolling these dung balls across the road. So we hopped out of the vehicle and then lots of people were trying to capture them. And I quite like it because the one just rests for a while and the other one pushes her along. So it's lovely to watch.
I think the drivers love it when they have groups that are actually interested in things other than the big five.
Yeah.
Gives them something different to look at.
Yeah.
Talking of which,
Yeah, so this guy, I mean, I've got a video that if we would have had time, I probably would have shown. This guy was unsuccessfully attempting to mate with a female in the morning in this beautiful light. And this was actually just before the stunning light hit him. So it was right on the verge of sunrise. But I love the kind of muted tones of it. And this is me leaning out of a vehicle slightly, because you always want to get as low an angle as possible, and it's quite tricky. And he was on a slight slope, but I do tend to, where possible, and if we have time and it's safe, stick my arm down as low as I can from the vehicle and just kind of try and get as much as the foreground out of focus if possible, just to kind of show him off a bit more. And I just quite liked how peaceful he looked.
have you ever tried doing that with a camera on a monopod? Just
Yeah, I'm just not
to look straight
coordinated enough.
down and then use your phone to
Mm.
direct in the right direction and shoot.
Yeah, I'm not coordinated enough. I like to be in control of the button.
Somebody has to hold your ankles.
Yeah. And this, so a couple of days earlier, I think we'd found these almost newly born lion cubs. They were absolutely incredible. They were moving them between dens, and this was one of the older. There were sort of two or three slightly different aged cub groups, and all sort of little cousins with about three or four mums. And these lionesses were lying in the bushes, and then this cub with one of the lionesses went off and was just trying to copy her, trying to scratch the tree to learn how to do it. And I just loved his. He was obviously the bravest of them because all the others were staying with mums. But he was just quite feisty, and I just quite like the contrast of it with a bit of some. I'd always try and, if I can, get some greenery in the front or something in the front. But yeah, he
I
was.
love it. I think this is what I was talking about earlier, was having the animal in the environment, not
Mm,
getting the temptations to go in tight with that beautiful face.
mm.
But the tree is a bigger part of the picture as the lion. There's a lovely composition. I really like that.
And even the colours, like I had to cut a
Oh,
few of
sorry.
the flowers off. But I was thinking I keep more because you want a bit of the purple and a bit of the yellow and like, yeah.
You say you went and cut the flowers off.
No, cropped it.
No crop
Imagine me with my little secateurs.
This is stunning. I love this picture, especially with the flies. This is, I mean, there's when you're judging competitions, there's certain animals that crop up all the time by the thousand, like polar bears and lions. And this is one that we haven't seen before. It's a completely different take. And so this is, have you entered it? It's a competition winner. This is really different.
Thanks. It's funny because it's one of those ones, and I guess any photographers will agree. It's one of those that you kind of you look at it on the back of the screen, you're like, oh, I don't know, and I nearly deleted it, and I just kind of couldn't because I just there's just something about it that I just really liked. But it annoys me because normally my rule is if the eye's out of focus, I delete it straight away, and actually I just couldn't, and I do, yeah, I do. There's something about it, isn't there? I just quite like it.
You know, the lesson there is you do not delete anything in the back of the camera. You
Ah,
don't notice the little details you spot when you look at it on
yeah,
the computer.
yeah,
I
true.
lose 3 points for that, so that gets a 7 out of 10.
Oh, thanks. So a few of us moved on to Uganda for a few days afterwards to do some gorilla trekking, which was incredible. And obviously there will be some gorillas, but I couldn't not talk about the small things, could I? Because obviously you're in a rainforest and it's very rainy, and we did experience quite a lot of rain. Um, but there is so much to be seen around the lodges as well as out on the treks. And I love a jumping spider. So if I ever find one, you will find my head in a bush looking for said jumping spider and taking lots of pictures of it. So yeah, I will find them everywhere. But this is obviously what we went to see. And like I say, we had two treks. One was stunning, sunshine, almost a bit too sunny. And then the next day was the most torrential rain I've seen in a long time for the exact 55 minutes that we were with the gorillas, which was typical. And then, of course, the sun came out afterwards. But actually, it was really nice to have that dichotomy to kind of give you that opportunity to try something a bit different. And of course, you know, the gorillas are like us, they don't really like the rain, they're going to hunker down. So we did get some nice opportunities for something a bit different. And this baby was actually hunkered down in the bush with her mum. So I just her, him, I don't know. It, they. So yeah, I just tried to kind of get in as much as possible, but obviously it's a hard thing to do. But I just love its little face. And then we were lucky enough to go to a pangolin rescue centre, which is just in Bwindi, in Uganda. And the guy there does some incredible work rescuing these pangolins from either villagers who don't really understand what they are, try and kill them because they think they're snakes or they're dangerous. So there's a lot of work going on to educate the local communities, schools, and then any that get found in the area are then brought to Moses and he looks after them and then re-releases them. So we saw two that were about to be re-released and they kind of get some time to run around in the wild, just in the fields there and up the trees. So you get to see them in their habitat. And then these two were being released the next day. So it was just really lovely to be able to see them.
I've never seen one in the wild, have
No,
you?
my first time seeing one
Yeah.
alive, which was amazing. So yeah, it was just a bit of a breathtaking minute. Um, and this, I know it's not the best photo. I acknowledge that. However, this was one of the most exciting moments for me in the last, well, definitely last year. This and the Carrigal. We were coming down from the very soggy, aforementioned gorilla trek, and we were nearly at the vehicle. And actually, I'd say I think four out of the five that I was with were actually already down near the vehicle. And this was maybe 5 minutes up the trail. And I stepped over a log. And I've been looking for these. This is a bird's nest fungi. I've been looking for this for about 25 years in the UK, in Europe, anywhere I've been. I had no idea they were going to be in Uganda, and I suddenly stepped over this log and suddenly saw one underneath and got ridiculously excited. And the guide started getting quite excited. We were all taking pictures, and it's a bit of a shame because I think I would have quite liked. I could have sat there for hours, but obviously we knew everybody was waiting for us at the vehicle, so we had to kind of hurry up. But I think that it's that thing about photography, isn't it? And a lot of it is the emotion that it brings for you. And I know a lot of people who wait after a trip to edit photos months later because they want the emotion to be gone. But for me, actually, that's a lot of what I love about photography is that it brings the emotions, whether it's something that you've experienced or that you can kind of see through the photo. Yeah, it's a lovely thing.
I'm laughing, thinking of waiting to process pictures. I worked out the other day, I've got 1.83 million raw files I've still got to go through. Makes
Oof.
me feel ill. So we're going to have to really speed up. We've been talking way too much. So I'll talk quickly. Dominica, again, I've been going there for about 30 years. It's a wonderful, wonderful place, snorkeling with sperm whales. We've actually put the trips on hold, unfortunately, because there aren't regulations as such. It's complicated. I won't go into all the details, but in the last couple of years, it started to get a little bit out of hand with some cowboys throwing people on top of the whales and too many people getting in the water with them. And we're working with the Dominican government and researchers to try to change that. And I think we will. The government's just declared a sanctuary along this coast of Dominica for the sperm whales. And there are now discussions in Parliament about proper regulations so that you'd only have a very small number of people in the water with the whales at once, and no boats racing about, and all on the whales' terms and that kind of thing. And hopefully that'll come to fruition, in which case we'll have a look at starting to run trips there again. But it is the most extraordinary, wonderful experience. You're literally that close to the whales, sometimes that close to shore, sometimes 10 miles offshore. You've got to be a fairly confident snorkeler. But they're just the most inquisitive, wonderful animals. I mean, that's a very different experience than looking inside a whale shark's eyes. Sorry to have another go at whale sharks, but they're real sentient beings. Just being with them is phenomenal. So we'll see these fairly quickly.
Can I actually, sorry, I'm going to make us later. Can you just go back one? Because this is one of my favorites, and I love when you kind of bring the underwater and above water as one. But one of the questions which I could come to later, but actually it works now. But what do you use? Is this with your camera in a housing
Yeah,
or?
you have to have a big dome port, it's called. It looks really fancy over the camera. So the camera's in underwater housing. Now this great big eye, it looks like, and only by having that can you get that effect. You can get them for GoPros actually. With a regular GoPro, you can't get that shot. But if you shoot with a GoPro and it's like 40 quid or something, you get a little housing, the GoPro goes in, and this dome port, then you can start doing shots half underwater and half above. But you need the dome port to do it. I was trying to get more of the land, but it's actually really difficult to do because it looks all calm, but everything's happening very quickly in a situation like that. That's where the very wide angle lens, this baby calf, it's huge. I don't know how big, about 17 feet long, I think it was. It came right up to me, and because I was using a very wide angle lens, the wider the lens, the less water you're shooting through, and therefore the sharper everything is. That lower jaw almost touched the dome port of my lens. You don't get it in the photo, but it came up from the depths that close, and then just dropped the jaw, and it almost touched the camera. It was absolutely fantastic. And that I just like because it shows the scale of the whole thing, the big expanse of the open ocean, this huge whale coming up from the depths, probably thousands of feet, and so inquisitive, coming and looking at the snorkeler. I mean, that's an encounter that's entirely on the whale's terms. And it'll hang around with the snorkeler, maybe have a bit of a break for 10, 15 minutes, and then dive back down and do a bit more feeding. Okay.
I'm back to my bugs. I don't only take pictures of bugs, I promise. So this is Bulgaria, where I went for the first time last year, and we've actually got some trips, well, a new trip this year, which is full, and next year. So it's going on the east side of the Rhodope Mountains, and the main targets are this, which is a spoonwing. which are the most stunning things. I mean, it's kind of a cross between a dragonfly and a butterfly. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know what it is, but it is stunning. But can be kind of photographically challenging because they tend to sort of sit on the underside of a tree or on a piece of grass or the wrong side of a piece of grass. So it does take quite a lot of time of following them around, watching them and being there at the end of the day when they're starting to figure out where they want to roost, which is why you've got the lovely light of the end of the day in this kind of corn patch. Um,
Stunning, stunning shot. I love the colour.
Thank you. And these are all with 100 to 500. So I do a lot with macro there, but actually these, I find the 100 to 500 when you've got quite a lot of foreground and background helps you to isolate the subject much better. So I tend to kind of use that more when it's a bit, especially when it's a bit further away. So this again is this is the other target. This is an owl fly. And this was in a field of kind of daisy white flowers. They were beautiful. And I suddenly saw this little thing flitting about, so I just got down and sat and waited and hoped it would come somewhere near me. And they very rarely open their wings like that. They kind of sit there, shut wings, and you have to desperately hope that you can catch them as they land. They have their wings open and then they clamp them shut. So there's only quite a short time. But then if they want some sun on them, obviously they'll open them more. So yeah, they're just really lovely to watch, and trying to kind of do something different, I guess, with it.
I think this is my favourite photo of yours up there with the lion with its open mouth.
Oh, thanks.
Stunning, stunning.
So yeah, again, on a piece of grass, but this was, I was quite lucky. Obviously, it was the end of the day. So using the light when it was earlier on and they had that nice warm light, this was as it got later. And there were quite a lot of trees in the background. So I love to get low and then use those trees and the light between the trees as for a bit of bokeh and just go as, so this is again on the 100 to 500, and further away from it, but the trees are obviously quite far away. So then the bokeh comes quite nice and big. So yeah, I do like.
Really effective.
Thanks. This guy jumped onto my flash diffuser. He's a little plant hopper nymph, probably about 2 millimeters high, absolutely tiny. And so I popped him off. I sort of got him off there, and he jumped onto this blade of grass. There was just this beautiful purple flower behind him. So I just grabbed a quick shot. But I just love the textures in his eyes and his nose, and just being able to kind of see them in their little world. It's just fantastic.
Another one, just one shot.
Mm. Whereas this one, I got my tripod and sat with this for a good probably half an hour, maybe more, first thing in the morning. And I've got a video of it, which I'm sure at some point I'll get around to editing, and might share. But its tongue was coming around and licking all the bits of dew off its antenna and its face. And again, I don't tend, this was on my macro, and I think sort of F probably 11, no flash, natural light. And but again, I haven't stacked it, and I wouldn't. I know some people would be annoyed that the one antenna is slightly out of focus, but I don't really mind. I don't know if you do.
No, because your eye goes straight to the droplets on
Mm.
the wing, I think, and then you start exploring. So if
Yeah.
that was not sharp, that would be a problem, but the rest of it is fine, I think.
And this is just one thing I absolutely love to find. There was some of these in Zambia as well this year, but this is a shield bug, green shield bug, their first instar, and they kind of uh, hatch out of these tiny eggs. So the little lid there pops off and they come out, and then they all huddle around and then gradually kind of peel off and go and live their lives. But it's always worth lifting up leaves because you just never know what you're going to find. And this was just on a leaf against a wall in the middle of a town, actually, I think, when we were staying in one of the little towns in Bulgaria. And it was just, I just love them. They're just.
Kind of thing most people miss.
Mm.
Okay, one of my favourite places. It lives up to its name, the Great Bear Rainforest. It's great. Lots of bears. These are a couple of young grizzly bears fighting, shot from a small boat, again leaning over the side to shoot at water level. Lots of forest, and it rains. I was there for a month in September. I think it rained twice, once for 21 days, once for 10 days. And I asked one of the locals if it ever stops raining. And he said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm afraid I've only lived here for 12 years." So it does rain a lot, but it's great for photography. And I've been going there for donkey's years as well. One of my favorite places on the planet. This is a black bear. We're just going along in a couple of small boats, a couple of Zodiacs, just putting along looking for stuff, and saw this on the bank in a little cave, just lying there asleep. and wasn't bothered by us, just sort of heard us and opened his eyes. And then there was another one sleeping behind, just popped its head up, looked at us, went back down, so that's fast asleep down below the claws of this one.
I was just going to say, I love its claws sticking up on the edge there.
Loads of whales. I mean, that's one really good thing. We always talk about things disappearing and, wildlife disappearing, but humpback whales are really on the up. And the last count, 190,000 humpbacks around the world, and it went down to maybe 5,000 at one point after whaling. And one thing I've noticed going to the Great Bear Rainforest year after year is there are more and more humpbacks every year, which is just fantastic. And we just see them all over the place. And this particular one gave us a wonderful display for, I think it was nearly 3 hours of lobtailing, tail breaching and breaching. And then immediately afterwards, another one came. I tried to do something a little bit different. I'm just hanging alongside the boat. And again, instead of going in tight and just getting the head, just showing a bit of where it is. You can see that's the Great Bear Rainforest behind. I think it's quite a nice way to do it. And we had some great wolf encounters this last season, more than most, and got some very close views of them. There was one particular, in fact, this beach, we found that we found some wolves the first trip. We did 3 trips in a row, and we realized if you could get there in the dark in the morning and just ground the zodiacs and wait quietly, then the wolves would come and they howl and they come and check us out. They were on the edge of the beach there. But I just like the shot showing the surroundings. There's such spectacular old trees, it's an old growth forest. And the 3 wolves walking in front of that to me was a stronger picture than some of the ones I took of one of them just filling the frame. And finally, we do sometimes see river otters, northern river otters, and had a great encounter with a little family of them. Again, swimming alongside the boat as they hunted along the coast. And there's that ever-present rain, but just wonderful for photography. Okay, so we're doing this again. We did this last year. Many years ago, I used to do something very similar on a different ship, which is going from Scotland, some Scottish islands. We go to Rockall, and then we head for Iceland. We go to the Greenland pack ice and Jan Mayen, which I bet most people have never heard of. Just a wonderful remote island that virtually nobody ever goes to, and then end up in Svalbard. And we're doing the same trip again this year. And I think they've got a few places still left, but it's a brilliant trip. It is a genuine adventure. This last year when we went, we passed the volcano in Iceland that's been erupting on the Reykjanes Peninsula, and we actually timed it. So we were there at 2 in the morning, got everybody up, and the sun was just starting to come up, and you could see the spectacular eruption. It was wonderful, with a little town, a few houses down in the foreground there. You can't do this justice with just 5 or 6 photos, but one of the places we go to is Grimsey in Iceland, off the north coast of Iceland, and it's just amazing for puffins. So we just us, there's a little village, but we can wander anywhere we like, and we have the whole day. And a lot of people never got very far at all. You just get to the first big group of puffins, you just sit with them, you get them in flight, and you have lunch with them, and you just watch their antics and so on. And photography possibilities are just phenomenal. And loads of other stuff. People like, there's a little lake on the way up to the puffin colony, which has got loads of redneck phalaropes in it. So other people get stuck lying down by the shoreline photographing them. And then on the village green, there's golden plovers and snow buntings and so on. It's the most wonderful island. And then we, as I say, we did see quite a few polar bears. I haven't put a polar bear picture in, particularly on the Greenland pack ice. Got up to Svalbard, some great views of a walrus, or a little walrus colony. Lots of reindeer, of course. I like that because it's just looking straight down the barrel of the lens. And the background here is just a lovely colour. It just sort of, I think, adds to the picture.
I love it because you don't normally see the younger ones either, do you?
No. Loads of bird activity, loads of bird cliffs, Arctic skua chasing a kittiwake. Again, you could just stand by one of these bird cliffs or sit in a zodiac and watch the world go by for days on end and not get bored. And this particular trip last year, we had amazing numbers of northern bottlenose whales. Not the best picture, I know, but we just kept coming across little groups of them, which if you're a whale watcher is pretty damn exciting. Saw loads of other whales as well. We saw a blue humpback, white-beaked dolphin, bowhead whale, fin whale, sei whale, minke whale, killer whale, loads of other stuff. But if you're a really keen whale aficionado, northern bottlenose whales ticks pretty much every box. Okay.
Oh, oh, we're in Namibia. So this was a bit different for me. So this was in September. So I run a photography trip there in September when it's kind of, well, normally fairly dry, but actually last year we had some rain in Damaraland, which was really unheard of. But this is down in the dunes near Swakopmund, and you drive around the dunes, and a little bit like Antarctic. There's so much to see and so many different landscapes. So I quite like looking out for just smaller scenes just to try and kind of break it down. I quite like a bit of shapes, so this appealed.
Just needs an oryx on that dune.
I know, wouldn't that be lovely? We did wait. Oh, is it this is now you're going to shout at me. Uh, so I've given Mark free rein to tell me off here. We're both quite similar in that we're quite purist in our photographic nature, technique, interest. And I could lie about this one and say this was a photo that I captured as it is, but unfortunately it wasn't. This was, however, one of the most emotional moments. Like we'd waited 2 days to see some good rhino activity, and we'd not been lucky the day before, and we'd gone back the next day, and we'd just seen them come out of this really thick bush, and they were going through the scrub, and then they went into this really thick bit, and we thought, oh, I mean, the chances are they're going to the waterhole. So we just thought, right, we'll go to the waterhole and wait. And then just as the sun was setting, they started kind of coming towards us. And when they got closer, they started running, kicking up this dust, which was stunning. So obviously you're firing away. But I'm such a perfectionist that it wasn't quite there for me. So I slightly doctored it. But I love this image. And I don't know if Mark even really likes it, but
I think the dust, I love the head on, the mum's great, and the dust is what makes it. And that tone, the same tone across the whole picture. So I go to the next one to show what
yeah,
you,
go on.
Emma showed me what she did before.
So yeah, because I thought it was only fair because, do you know, like I say, I could lie, and I don't really know why I'm telling you, but I'm going to because I don't like lying. So this is the
That's
first
the
one.
first one.
Yeah, that's the main one. So this was the first one I took. So you can see the calf is a bit more in focus. The mum is legs and body, but just not the face enough for me. And like I say, the eyes, if they're not sharp, I'm deleting it. But if you go to the next one, the calf there is out of focus, but the mum's head is in focus. So I decided they were similar enough that I could take the head of the mum onto the other one. You want to go down one more? And then it becomes that, which I think works better. And I know what you mean.
I think is outrageous
I
because
know. I know. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, it is a lovely photo, but I'm a great believer in not manipulating. And I know you are too most of the time as well. But I think if you miss the shot, you miss the shot. And I think the temptation is to start. It's a slippery slope. It's not
Mm.
you to do this because it's the same mum and calf, the same occasion, same moment, same place. But
Well,
I
this,
do know some photographers who would then take a calf from a completely different shoot and
yeah,
put it there, and that's the bit further down the slippery slope. And as soon as you start doubting a photographer because you think they might do that kind of thing, then it
yeah.
ruins all their pictures. Every time you see a great picture, you think, oh, maybe they've cheated, maybe it's too good to be true.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think that's probably why I talk about it because the guilt was so much. It's an interesting one though, isn't it? Because I get asked about focus stacking with macro so much. In my head, it's not really that different to that. I've kind of put, two planes of where they were in focus
No,
together, but for some reason it doesn't sit well with me. So I've not really done a lot about it because yeah, it doesn't sit well, but it's a funny one.
no,
It's
you could argue it's a form of focus stacking, but as I say, just think it's a bit of a slippery slope. You've got to just be,
Mm.
it's a personal decision where you draw the line, whether you have
Yeah,
to go back or the next stage down the slope or something before this. Hey, we
yeah.
need to really speed up.
Yes, boss. So
People have
this
got to go to
one,
bed. I know
you
it's
want to
only,
it's
go on.
8:36. So this was right towards the end of the day, actually, when we just arrived in Ongava, which is a gorgeous lodge on this rock face. And there's these beautiful rock hyraxes or dassies that live in the rocks, the rock face, and they come out. And this guy was just climbing all over this tree, and I just got the sun behind it and waited until he was kind of stretched out. I was just hoping he wasn't going to fall off. But just watching them do their thing and just trying to get the light, I just loved.
It's nice to see it off a rock where you see most pictures.
Yeah,
Things are a bit different.
yeah. And this is, a fairly classic, but we were luckily, well, we thought about where to go. We weren't lucky. So we saw these elephants coming, and positioned ourselves, and just kind of luckily for us, they just did do that really nice split for the three of them. So it's one of those, could I've got all three sharp? I don't know, but I didn't really want to. It's quite nice to have them staggered,
Oh
really.
yeah, I think it works with them getting more and more blurry.
Mm.
Yeah, lovely.
Gorgeous. And you get that opportunity quite a lot. There's just all these open expanses like in the dunes. So if this ostrich would have been in those first dunes, happy days. But I
Yeah,
mean, I still
cool.
quite liked him here. Yeah.
This is lovely.
Thanks.
And with the
Yes.
colours not the same as the other dunes, why have you made it black and white?
It just worked better. It was a bit of a cloudy day. The dunes weren't popping. And I just thought actually he just stood out more with black and white. And I just quite liked the track of his feet coming
Yeah,
in.
I love that. Yeah.
So yeah, he was a stunner. And again, it is all about playing with light, isn't it? This was right at the end of the day, and we literally got to grab about 2 shots before he flew off. But this is a lilac-breasted roller, so it's a bit of a different take on a well-photographed bird. But it was at sunset when we got to our last lodge in Namibia, and he was just perched very close to us, flew off, perched on this tree, and just had the sun behind it, which just made it gorgeous. Slightly annoyed it slightly burnt out in the middle, but like I say, he flew straight off, so there wasn't really much we could do. But
You just took one shot.
two, I think.
It's great. I'm not bothered by the burning out in the middle because your eye goes straight to the bird, not to
Mm.
the white bit. It's no lovely shot that. So I'm going
Just
to
think,
rave on Hungary in the summer. I've already raved about Hungary. This is just slightly different photography, many more hides and different subjects, of course, in the summer. This was just a lucky egret that caught 2 fish with one beak. This is from obviously one of the water hides shooting at water level. Otters you can see year round. There weren't so many this winter for some reason. I think it's probably just a blip. There's no reason. They're still around, still seeing all their signs. But if you get a good week, they're coming and going every 20 minutes in the hide, one particular hide. And there's lighting there. So what's extraordinary, they're completely wild otters. A vast area they can roam. But there's artificial lighting there. So you can have backlighting, front lighting, sunrise lighting, sunset lighting, white lighting, and the otters don't blink. So this is with backlighting to get the whiskers and front lighting to get the detail in the otter, shooting along water level through a one-way glass from about, I would say that would be 20 feet away, maybe a bit less. And in the summer, you get lots of species we get in the UK that are not particularly common here. Things like turtle doves and so on. Loads of cuckoos, lesser spotted woodpeckers, that kind of thing. Plus more southern species like hoopoe, bee-eater, roller, golden oriole, and that kind of thing. And then around where we stay, there's a big colony of several thousand ground squirrels, and they're all around where we eat. They're sort of running around your feet. They were rescued from Budapest Airport. Budapest Airport was going to kill them all because they were getting on the runways. Benta persuaded the airport to close briefly, and with some friends caught them all, brought them back to his place, his nature reserve, and they've done very well. They've bred like rabbits, like ground squirrels, and there's some wonderful hides shooting at eye level again through the grass. You could just spend days just doing them. They're cute animals. A lot of hares around in the summer as well. Several hides for shooting hares and other stuff. Each hide tends to have a number of different things. And I just love that wood behind. I've got lots of different species of bird right in front of that wood with different bigger and smaller frames and that kind of thing. And it's a great place to photograph things like swallows because he's got the setup. So you can get them drinking, coming down a drinking pool straight towards you. You're sitting in the hide and they fly down and drink. And there's mud right in front, and they come and collect mud and bits of grass and so on for their nests. And you get the best views of swallows you're going to get anywhere. It's really good fun. I mean, again, I think I did 2 weeks last year and took 64,000 pictures. I haven't even been through them all yet. And you just get so many opportunities, so many different species. You leave after a week being absolutely shattered because nobody wants to say no. The opportunities are, you have quick bite to eat and all these places you could go to. Nobody's, no, I'm going to go and have a sleep. Everyone's off, even though they can hardly stand by Friday, Saturday morning.
It's a funny thing, isn't it? I think it makes such a difference when you can get eye level. And we always say that, don't we? But in those hides, I think it's one of those really unique places where you can really just get eye level with things that you wouldn't normally be able to. Bit like this little leopard cub. So this was in Zambia in November, where we were really lucky. About 2 weeks or so before we have about 3 or 4 trips there a year in November, and about 3 weeks before our trip started, the local leopardess, who's now about, I think, 11 or 12, started bringing out her 2 cubs. So for all of our 3 groups, we were able to find them, not regularly, but enough to be able to get some really nice sightings of them. But this was actually just before the first group arrived. I had a couple of days there, and it was my first sighting of them, and they were just lying on this tree. And the mum had gone off to hunt, and I mean, this one was the bravest out of the two, and actually then about 20 minutes later nearly got himself killed because he took on the head of a baboon troop, like the big male of a baboon troop, and nearly got eaten. But so far he's still alive. But I just loved the kind of the surroundings, and a bit, you often think, oh, it's leaves in the way, but actually I love that sometimes to just add a bit of texture. Otherwise it would just be sort of a cat on a stick.
Again, it's gorgeous pastel colours.
Mm. That's something about, isn't it? Africa is just I don't know what the light does there, but it's like obviously the dust and things help, but just the colors that you get in Africa are incredible. This is one of those moments where I took probably about 50 pictures of this little elephant calf under her mum. She was so young. She still had pink behind her ears, so when she walked, you could see the pink flap still. She wasn't dirty yet. She was only probably a day or so old, if that. I mean, the hair, well, I don't know, the hair's gone a bit, but yeah, she was still very new. But I really wanted to kind of frame her because she was obviously really nervous, and I just liked the idea of her being, safe under the mum. So I had to wait until nothing of her was kind of touching or looking like it was touching. So that was a bit of a frustrating one, but I think I quite like it. And this this is ridiculous, but this is actually one of my favorite photos, I think. This was
Oh,
during in lunchtime in the camp, the little vervets come and play, and this one was just messing about with its sibling and then just went up and hung around in the tree, and it was just the cutest thing. He was obviously really kind of intrigued with what I was doing, but yeah, it's part again, you can sit for a while at lunchtime, but it's definitely worth going and exploring what's around because there's always so much going on, isn't there?
looks like he's got stretchy trousers on.
Yeah, it does. And this is at the Carmine Bee Eater colony. So this is one of the reasons we go in November. It's a really hot time to go. Towards the end of the season, start of the rainy season. We did have quite a lot of rain actually this year, which is good and bad, both ways really. But the Carmine Bee Eaters are fantastic at that time of year because they're nesting in the riverbanks. So you get really good opportunities to stand either on top of the riverbanks or kind of down. If you get a little divot or something, you can go down to the edge of the river, and you just get to watch them coming and going, feeding the babies. So it's a really nice place to go at the end of the day, just to play with the light a bit so that's obviously the river in the background with the sun setting. And I just, again, a bit of a spray and pray with how many shots you take, but I just really like the shapes on this one.
I think you've got to take loads in that situation because
Yeah.
that blurry one below is what makes the shot. You
Yeah.
can't aim to get that. You just keep shooting
No, of course I aim to get it. What are you on about?
with your one shot.
Yeah. Um, this one was a one shot. And I kind of love it. I know that there's a lot that could be better about it. I wish there was a bit more light underneath so you could see the green, but I've wanted to photograph turquoise for such a long time, and you tend to get just an eye or the top of a head or a wing in the tree because they're always zipping in and out of the trees and behind the branches. And I just was ready for this one when it flew above, and this was just it flying over our vehicle into another tree. Um, but I just love the color of it with the sun coming through its
I know
wing.
a photographer who would actually repair all those feathers, but I think they
Oh,
give it character. People don't like non-perfect birds, but I
no.
love it. I think that's what gives it character.
Why would you? You can't repair it. That's how he is.
People, you'd be amazed what people do. Okay,
Oh.
last one.
Yeah, last one. So this again was I think it was quite a sunny afternoon, a vulture on a tree, classic Africa. But this is the time generally in Africa or anywhere where it's really sunny, I tend to say, right, black and white now, just make it as silhouette as possible because otherwise it's really contrasty. It just looks a bit um well, it just doesn't work. So for me, this works better. So I have darkened the vulture, and and the stick. But yeah, for me, it just works a lot better than if it was kind of a bit washed out colours.
Really striking.
Thanks. There you
Okay.
go. Oh, that was a whistle stop tour of 2024.
We're both talking faster and
I
faster.
know.
You took
Can
so
we slow
long.
down now? So thanks everyone who stayed with. Easy, Tiger. Go back.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. Uh, thank you for sticking with us. I've got a couple of questions, but if there are any, Selena, sorry, I saw that you stuck your hand up, but I don't really know what to do with that. So if you do want to stick a question in the Q&A, I can answer that. So Mark, with Hungary, what sort of focal length are you using in the water level hide? I know you mentioned distance at one point, but just a bit of an idea of length.
Well, uh, 500 would be the longest you'd need. I tend to use 100 to 300 lens because I like to shoot a little bit wider. The birds are anything from a foot away to, half a mile away, and everywhere in between. So you can sort of pick your subject depending on your lens. But I would say medium telephoto, 300 to 400 would be perfect. If you got one, that would be the one to take.
Perfect. I nearly forgot. I have remembered. I'm going to launch the poll as well now while we're just talking through some questions. This has a number of trips that we've talked about, or that relate to what we've talked about, particularly. So the one I was talking about with the Antarctic is one we're doing in February next year and the year after, which is for sort of Antarctic and Wales. But there's lots about the macro and North Atlantic and things. So do request that. Whatever you ask for will be sent through to you, and then we can answer any questions in the sales team whenever you would like to know. Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Sorry to interrupt then. So actually talking about South Georgia and Antarctica, there's a lot of discussion and it's one of the questions everyone always asks, when's the best time to go and when should I go? And it's such a hard one, but uh, Bill's asking, later in the season is obviously better to see whales, and I know
Mm.
behavior seems to be changing, but is that still the case? And also, are there large numbers of finback seen late in the season?
Well, there's no bad time to go during that period from October through to March. Every month has its benefits and so on. Was it Bill who was asking the question?
Yeah.
Bill is right. Later in the season, sort of February, early March, you tend to get many more humpbacks, especially down at the Antarctic Peninsula. The fin whales you tend not to see down by the peninsula. You see on the crossings. There's certain places, a little group of rocks approaching South Georgia where we tend to see more fin whales and so on. And we're seeing those throughout the season. The flip side of all of that is earlier in the season is fantastic because there's tends to be a lot more snow and ice. And so it's as you imagine the place should be, and great for photography. As you progress in the season, of course, the breeding seasons get more active, the chicks get larger, you get parents feeding chicks and so on. So as I say, there's no bad time, it's just different. I tend to go earlier in the season or later in the season for the snow and ice and for the whales.
Yeah. And yeah, it's an interesting one because I'm quite looking forward to seeing it at a different time of year because I went November, December and we saw in the Falklands some of the gentoos had just hatched literally that afternoon when we were there. So we saw them kind of coming out of their eggs and, being fed, and which was fantastic. But yeah, I loved that pristine whiteness of everything. But I'm quite excited about going and seeing it at a different time in kind of February, March, when you get more activity and more of the
Yeah,
babies are running around being a bit cheeky. And so there's no bad time, is there? It's just, it
no,
depends,
there's
I
not.
guess, what you want to see. If you want the pristineness of the white, go earlier. If you want a bit of fun and frolics and possibility of whales and bit more action, maybe go later. So um great, right. So Steve, oh, extension tubes. So he's asking, so I obviously was talking about the macro ones and when we're there. So I do tend to use the 100 to 500 quite a lot actually with roosting butterflies or the owl flies or the spoonwings, that kind of thing. If it's far enough away, I don't tend to use extension tubes. I haven't actually got any yet for my new lens, so I am thinking about getting those at the photography show potentially next week. So watch this space. But at the moment, I don't. I just tend to get myself as close as possible. So I think my focusing distance is about a meter. I tend to get myself as close as possible and then have it on a fairly decent f-stop, like 7.1 or something, and make sure the background's as far away as possible. And that tends to work not too badly, I think.
You haven't used extension tubes until maybe now.
No, I never tend to use extension tubes really. No. I have done in the past. And I've also got an incredible one of those Laowa lenses that's 2.5 to 5 times. So I have been playing with that a bit, getting the textures of butterflies' wings and things like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, as yet, I don't tend to use them. It's another one I just find like we're talking about with simplicity, isn't it? I just want to pick up the camera and do the thing. It's not like, oh, which tube should I put on and maybe a bit of this. Sometimes if I've got lots of time, you can have a bit of a play, but I quite like just the thing as it is with a bit of
That was good for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So do you shoot in black and white or convert post process? I do a bit of both actually. I don't know about you, but I tend to do it in color normally and then sometimes I'll convert it afterwards. But actually more recently, especially when it's, middle of the day in the middle of Namibia or something and you've got horrible heat haze, I just think actually I'm going to turn it into black and white and see how it looks and try and have a bit of a play. So yeah, I do a bit of both, but if you've got it in raw, obviously you've got it both ways.
Yeah, I haven't shot in black and white since black and white film days. Um, no, I shoot in color and then change to black and white, which is a skill actually.
Mm.
I cheat a little bit. There's a fantastic bit of software called Silver FX Pro,
Oh yeah, it's great.
which you have lots of options. So there's 20 different variations of what it looks like, and then you can tweak the option. It's a real skill. When I've judged photography competitions, you get wonderful pictures in black and white, but they're just not done properly. They generally lack contrast. So it's worth practicing changing color to black and white. It's not just removing the saturation, removing the color. You have to actually work on it a bit more than that. But have a look at Silver Effects Pro and I think that's a really good way in. And if you, as you say, if you shoot raw, you don't really need to shoot black and white. You can shoot color and convert it, and the effect is exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like you said, just after you convert it to black and white, just do play with those middle levels to change because it is so easy in Lightroom, isn't it? Nowadays we're a bit spoiled, but yeah, FX gives you a bit more control and you can be a bit braver,
And
can't
it's a
you?
very good way of learning, even if you don't
Yeah,
use it forever, because you can see high key, low key, high contrast, low contrast, and see what it looks like and get a feel for what works. And again, it's subjective. And
yeah,
then you gradually work out how you convert. You can do it all in Lightroom or Photoshop, just needs a bit more experience and takes a bit more time. But it's a great way of learning the different effects you can get with different combinations of black and white.
yeah. Right. So Emma wants to know, do you recommend any specific colors of filter to use on Safari in Africa? And is a UV filter essential? Uh, I would say no for both. I have a UV filter, but that's more to protect my lens because I'm a bit clumsy. Um, so I don't obviously for my big ones, but for the macro one, it actually saved it before I then killed it a couple of months ago. Um, but yeah, I don't tend to use any. Some people do like a polarizing filter if you like a really deep blue sky or if you want to play around with the reflections on the water. But I don't tend to use them really. I don't know about you, Mark.
No, I would agree. On most of my lens, I've got a filter on the front just to protect it, and occasionally use a polarizer. But you can overdo it sometimes with those. The clouds are often so dramatic anyway. You've got to be careful not to make it look artificial. But if I were going on safari, I would take a polarizer, certainly for the wider lenses, and may or may not use it. But for the longer ones, no.
Yeah, no, same. I hope that answers that, Emma. And Tracy, are there any macro courses this year? There are, but I'm afraid they've sold out. And I really have been trying to find extra days and I can't, and I'm really sorry. So I am looking at a couple more ideas for next year. So watch this space with that. But we also have the Festival of British Wildlife next year up in Scotland, which is where I got that the close up of the chafer. So if you like that, that just gives you lots of time to kind of play around with macro. But yeah, we are looking at launching some new things about that. So we'll keep you posted. I think that's about it. Unless anybody has any other questions, I think we can let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. So Mark, now can you go to the next one, please?
Oh yeah. Oh, hang on, it's doing it.
Have you broken it? Thank you. So obviously, as usual, there is the discount code down there. So AYP Zoom 25 for £100 off anything. If you mention that, if you book post talk. Couple more talks over the next 2 weeks. I can't believe March is next week. Paradise in Papua New Guinea with Mike Dilger, who went over there a few months ago. So I'm sure we'll be talking excitedly about what he saw there, which sounded amazing. And then on the 10th of March, we've got Nick Joins talking about Namibia, who, again, he's just got back, I think, yesterday. So I'm sure lots of new things to talk about there. Oh, was it? Yeah. So yeah, that's about it. So Mark, thank you so much for fitting us
Thank
in with all
you.
the
And
BBC
thank you
Radio.
everyone for watching. Hope it was
Yeah.
helpful, useful, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Um, and yeah, we'll hopefully see you next week for Papua New Guinea. But for now, thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.